There's a big shakeup going down in the world of Magic the Gathering right now. Multiple cards have just been banned across 3 separate formats.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends! I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to talk about something quite interesting. The March 7th, 2022 banned and restricted announcement. Not only are cards being banned across 3 different formats, but at the same time, we are also getting an unbanning. So let's dive right in. We're going to start out talking about Modern. And in Modern, we are seeing that Lurrus is now banned. And this makes perfect sense to me. Lurrus of the Dream Den is an absolutely bonkers card, right? The casting cost on this thing is 2 hybrid white and black and 1 generic mana for a 3/2 cat nightmare. And the nightmare is so applicable in terms of thinking about this card in essentially any format. It's incredibly powerful. This is one of the companions from Ikoria, and Companion all by itself was a huge mistake in terms of card design. Surprisingly enough, this was already known internally at Wizards of the Coast, and they decided to go ahead and do the Companion concept anyhow. The original idea behind Companion was you would build your deck under particular restrictions. So in the Lurrus's case, every single permanent card in your starting deck has to have a converted mana cost of 2 or less. If your deck meets these conditions, then you get to have the Companion card start outside the game as an 8th card in your hand. And you'll notice when you take a look at the original printing that's up on the screen, this card originally, with the printed version of Companion, didn't even require that you pay 3 mana to put it into your hand. Companion was so strong that they had to nerf it and go, actually, you know what? To be able to use Companion now, you have to actually pay 3 mana and put it into your hand. And even adding that clunky extra stuff to Companion was not enough to take away the power level of the ability. Starting with an extra card in your hand that can't be messed with is incredibly strong. And I really do believe that now that Lurrus is banned, we're going to see an uptick in people trying to mess around with Yorion decks, because Yorion's restriction is just that you play with 80 cards. And there are ways to mitigate having a larger size deck that are worth taking on the extra work to make it work, because you get the benefit of having Yorion as your 8th card. So I expect that over time, more of these companions are going to be a problem. But Lurrus is clearly the screaming example of a card that should never have been printed. When Wizards of the Coast talks about why this card needs to be banned, the reasons they give are reasons that they know very well. They actually talk about how essentially when you get into really competitive formats like Modern, you have hyper efficient scenarios, right? The concept is the more card pool you have to draw on, the better your choices are going to be. Now, the Modern card pool is massive, right? We're talking about everything with a Modern card frame. That stretches all the way back to 8th edition, which was so long ago. So you have this really deep pool of cards. People are going to use the most efficient cards, and a lot of time efficiency comes in the form of lower casting costs. Take a look at the Standard format, for example. Look at how fast things go in Standard. Standard is the slowest format outside of the more casual formats like Commander. Yes, if you play super competitive Commander, then the game can fly by pretty quick. But ultimately, when you boil it down with the competitive formats, Standard is the slowest competitive format, and you can see games ending pretty quickly in that format. Once you move into Modern and other formats like that, the pace is greatly accelerated. So modern games are going to be much faster overall. They're going to be decided in earlier turns, which gives an inherent advantage to somebody who's using really low cost cards, right? You want to push the most effective things you can out of the gate at the lowest cost. So the Lurrus here is basically just already tying into what you're trying to do. You're already trying to make sure that your permanents are nice and tight and cheap and effective in every possible way. So this really isn't much of a drawback at all. And then on top of that, the fact that it lets you every turn, you can cast one permanent from your graveyard with converted mana cost 2 or less every single turn is absolutely nuts. Not to mention the fact that it's a 3/2 lifelink. This is too much packed into a card. Wizards of the Coast knew what they were doing when they made this. It kind of blows my mind that they pushed things this hard, because this is clearly this is a busted card. This is not balanced Magic design. It comes from Ikoria, and Ikoria really did have the feel of a mishmashed, everything kind of thrown together at the last moment set. They told us back in the day that originally Ikoria was supposed to be Throne of Eldraine 2 in that slot, but they had to basically move everything around, I believe, to accommodate the Godzilla tie-in, but they didn't say that specifically. That's just my feeling. Either way, Ikoria ended up very disjointed, and the companions, in my opinion, are the biggest problem that spawned from this set, right? We saw the companions just being ruinous when they were available in Standard. And surprise, surprise, Wizards wanted to leave Lurrus and see what would happen in Modern. Oh, look, we'll leave it alone. And lo and behold, it's just too strong and too effective. So it got the boot, right? And it's the kind of card, don't ever expect to see this come back. It's just too good. There's way too much wrapped up in the package. And it's a shame because the artwork and the concept of the card is really cool. So it's too bad that it's relegated to the ban pile, but you'll find it in people's cubes and things like that. Now, the other format that we're going to mention in terms of the Lurrus is Pioneer, because Lurrus is also getting slammed down in Pioneer. And at this point, it makes sense. It's obviously proven its pedigree. It's just going to be a problem in Pioneer. Obviously, when you have a more fledgling format like Pioneer, you don't really want to be trimming it down too much and sort of like snipping out people's options. But Lurrus is so insane that there is no way we would not be revisiting this conversation and going, Lurrus is dominating Pioneer, a smaller card pool where stronger cards will stand out even more because there are fewer of them and have more of an outsized sort of feel to them, right? So Lurrus is gone in Pioneer and Modern. I expect to see Yorion trying to step in and take the same sort of spot to a degree, but Yorion isn't quite as, I can just go into almost anything that's already happening the same way that Lurrus is, right? Now, the main action with the bannings and unbannings actually are going down with Pauper, all right? So we have 2 cards getting banned in Pauper and 1 being unbanned. Disciple of the Vault, Galvanic Relay are getting banned, I should say. Expedition Map is getting unbanned. Now, starting with Disciple of the Vault, this is a super powerful card for a common. 1 black mana for a 1/1 that says whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from play, you may have target opponent lose 1 life. Now, you may recall that we actually talked about a previous banning that occurred where they axed out Atog trying to take down the level of the affinity action. Affinity is too strong. We need to nerf it to a degree. So we're going to go ahead and cut out Atog. But they had considered getting rid of Disciple of the Vault, because the idea is you have your Disciple of the Vault out, right? You have an Atog out, and the Atog eats artifacts. It's a sack outlet. So you're sacking all your artifacts to the Atog, and the Disciple of the Vaults are just punishing your opponents, right? Because remember, Pauper has a new cycle of artifact lands that it got with Modern Horizons 2. So you can actually have a wide range of artifacts on the board just built into your mana base alone, let alone the other permanents on the board. So once you get the Disciple of the Vault and the Atog rolling together, you can just feed your mana base in and go, boom, look at all the life you lose on top of what other artifacts you sacrifice, right? So they said, you know what, we'll get rid of Atog, because not only does Atog enable that strategy, but at at the same time, the ATOG gets +2/+2 for every one of those artifacts that you've eaten. So he's a big problem. He needs to go. So after getting rid of ATOG, what happens with Affinity? Well, Affinity players get crafty. They start looking about and go, okay, what can we replace this with? And they turned to a very odd choice at first, the Krark-clan shaman. You take a look at this, and it's 1 red for a 1/1, and it says sacrifice an artifact, and it deals 1 damage to each creature without flying. So your brain may be going, wait a minute. They put in this card that lets you sacrifice an artifact, but then when you sacrifice an artifact, it's going to do 1 damage to all your dudes, so it destroys your Krark-clan shaman, and it destroys your Disciple of the Vault as well. Why would you possibly want to do that? Well, you do it when you have enough artifacts out that you're just going to win. So you just go, oh, you know what? I have 20 artifacts out, or 10 if you have 2 Disciple of the Vault out, right? And then you just go, I'm going to eat all my artifacts through the Krark-clan, put it all on the stack, and then as they resolve, sure, your little 1/1s get taken out by the damage, but it doesn't matter because all of those Disciple of the Vault triggers are on the stack. And as a result, your opponent's just going to lose all their life, right? So at this point, they've turned around and went, okay, Disciple of the Vault has to go. And I understand the line they're trying to walk here because Pauper is an interesting format in terms of balance. You're dealing with commons, so you're not dealing with the same power level as other formats. But there are definitely commons that have an outsized power level, but you don't want to just cut all of those out of your format because people like having access to powerful cards, right? And powerful commons aren't really on the same level as powerful rares or mythics. So I don't know, they probably should have banned Disciple of the Vault on the last banning, but it doesn't feel like it. You should have automatically known better because my brain didn't go Krark-clan shaman. Some people are thinking outside the box here. But either way, Disciple of the Vault has been hit with the ban hammer. So has Galvanic Relay. That is 1 red and 2 for a sorcery that lets you exile the top card of your library. During your next turn, you may play that card, and it has Storm. And obviously, Storm is where we run into problems time and time again with Magic the Gathering, right? So the idea that you can just bundle all these spells together, cast a whole bunch of spells, and then storm off. We already saw that they had to turn around and get rid of Chatterstorm in Pauper, right? And it's the exact same kind of scenario that we saw when they got rid of ATOG. Everybody, when something from their favorite deck gets nerfed, they don't go, okay, I'm going to get rid of this deck. Their first thought is, how do I find something else that makes this work? And a Galvanic Relay Storm deck is actually surprisingly effective in Pauper. The win rate on the deck is much higher than even most successful decks. It's to the point where they have literally no choice but to step in and take the card down. You have to find that balance in your format. But Storm is always going to be a problem, and there's a couple of different ways to approach it. One is to just try and gut the underlying mechanics of it in terms of you're trying to cast a ton of spells. Let's take away all of your access to mana, right? Like, let's take away all your speed mana. Okay, you got these instants that boost the amount of mana, pay 2, get 3, whatever it is. You can't use those spells because they work too effectively in Storm. But the problem is, people really enjoy stuff like that. And if you yank all of that out, are you pulling out too much? Because you can go too far with these kind of changes. And that's actually what we see when we take a look at the unbanning of Expedition Map. Essentially what happened with the last banning was they wanted to come down on Tron. They said Tron needs to be taken down. It's getting too powerful. So they went ahead and nerfed Tron by getting rid of multiple artifacts that produce mana that were prominent in the Tron deck. And it worked really, really well, but it worked too well, in fact, to the point where Tron's presence has been diminished enough that they want to find a way to boost it back up, but without bringing back the artifacts that they already removed. So Expedition Map is coming back, and I mean, for a Tron deck, 1 mana for an artifact, 2 and sack it, go through your deck for any land you want, reveal it, put it into your hand. That's not too bad. Honestly, this is one of those cards that when they originally printed it in Zendikar, I kind of shrugged and didn't pay that much attention to it because my brain just treated it like every other basic land grabber. But when you realize, wait a minute, you can just snag any land with this, this is a decent way to be able to grab particular pieces that you need. And ultimately, there's not too many decks that are going to be really well served and overpowered using it comparatively to Tron, because when you're playing Pauper, a lot of the like really crazy lands in the game happen to be like rare or mythic, right? You don't have like a lot of absolutely mind-blowing common lands in Magic the Gathering. The truth is that the commons tend to be overall weaker as part of the design of the game, but there's a lot of depth that you can enjoy playing with them as well. So to me, when I look at the choices that they've made here, Expedition Map being unbanned really doesn't feel too powerful because I can only think of it like doing a ton for Tron, although Affinity, I mean, maybe might have a little bit of fun with it, but I doubt it. I don't know. Anyhow, that covers the banned and restricted announcements, my friends. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm going to leave some links to some videos up on the screen for you here, and I will see you, my friends, in the next video.